Once upon a time, there was a beautiful princess who lived in a fabulous palace. The palace had huge gardens filled with roses, briars, wild flowers, and yellow sunflowers. The princess loved to spend time in the garden, lounging on the rope swing or sunbathing. One particular day, she was tossing a lustrous gold ball up and down in the air. She wandered across the gardens, daintily throwing the ball. As she passed by the mossy old pond, her fingers slipped for a second. Splash! The golden ball fell into the murky depths of the pond. The princess wept. "My beautiful ball! It was a gift from my mother and father. Oh, how sad they will be that I lost it!" As she wept, the princess heard another smaller splash. A fat green frog sat on the edge of the pond. He was so slimy looking that the princess stopped crying at once. "Ugh!" she said, "a horrible frog!" To her surprise, the frog began to speak. "Princess, I can get your ball back for you on one condition. I am a lonely old frog. Will you take me to dinner at your house, dine with me, and kiss me good night?" The princess was disgusted by the offer. "I do want my ball back," she thought, "but I don't want to kiss him. I will accept his offer and then run away back to the palace. There is no way he can catch me up there." She turned back to the frog and said sweetly, "All right, Mr. Frog, you have my word. Get me my ball back, and I will do what you have asked." The frog swam deep into the pond and floated the golden ball back to the surface. The princess cheered. She grabbed the ball and said to the frog, "I have to go back to the castle now, but I'll come and collect you later for dinner." The frog waited until it got dark. Suspecting that the princess would not return to help him, he decided to hop up to the castle to find her instead. The frog hopped through an open window and into the grand dining hall. The princess sat with the king and queen eating her dinner. "Princess," said the frog, "I have come to eat with you as you promised." The princess turned pink with embarrassment. The frog told the king the story of the golden ball. The king said sternly, "Princess, you made a promise to this frog. He will eat with us and spend the evening in the castle." The princess was annoyed. She didn't want to have to talk to the gross frog or spend the evening with him. She especially didn't want to kiss him good night, but her father had been very stern. So she had to keep her word. As it turned out, the frog was an excellent dinner guest. He was witty, charming, and very polite. By the end of the meal, the princess didn't mind spending more of the evening with him. "Frog, you are quite sweet and funny," said the princess as they sat by the fire in her bedroom. "I supposed I was wrong to call you horrible just because you're green and slimy." The frog smiled with his green gummy mouth. "Well, princess, would you perhaps think about keeping the last part of your promise? Might I have a kiss good night?" The princess leaned down and pecked the frog on his damp little mouth. Whoosh! As soon as her lips touched him, the small green frog transformed into a handsome young prince. The princess screamed in astonishment. "Oh, princess, thank you. You have broken the spell. I was enchanted many years ago by an evil witch who wanted to steal my castle and wealth for herself. I have waited all this time for the kiss of a beautiful princess to set me free." The princess was thrilled. "I'm so happy I kept my word. It seems that being kind to others isn't so bad after all, and I shouldn't have judged on your frog's body. You're not gross at all." After she had broken the spell, the princess and the prince fell deeply in love. From that day, The princess kept all her promises and never made fun of anybody for the way they looked. She had learned that you never know when a handsome prince might be hiding in a frog's body. Long, long ago, in the times of castles and kings, there lived an honorable man named Robin Hood. He was known throughout the land for his good deeds and for helping poor people, much to the dislike of the sheriff, who ruled with cruelty and greed, forcing high taxes on the poor. Robin lived as an outlaw in the forest to escape the sheriff, where he had gathered a band of merry men to live with him. They were a good-natured group who loved to laugh and have fun in all that they did. The sheriff and his soldiers often tried to hunt down Robin in the forest. They hated Robin, as he played tricks on them and made them look foolish. Whenever they came to arrest him, Robin and his merry men would hide in the trees, sending arrows raining down on the soldiers from above. They would laugh and shout silly names at them. No matter how many soldiers came, they were never able to catch Robin Hood. One day, Robin was able to sneak into the sheriff's castle, disguised as a knight. The gang would hide their green clothes under full suits of armor and ride big black horses right through the gates of the castle. Inside, they sought out the sheriff's treasure and got his riches that he took by force from the poor. They found rooms filled from floor to ceiling with glittering gold coins. After they filled up their sacks in the castle, Robin would gamble through the streets, throwing gold coins through the windows of the townsfolk. Many were very poor because the sheriff would tax them so heavily, wanting the money for himself. When the coins rained down into their humble homes, they cried tears of joy. They would be able to eat again, all thanks to the bravery and good hearts of Robin and his merry men. After they filled up their sacks in the castle, Robin would gamble through the streets, throwing gold coins through the windows of the townsfolk. Many were very poor because the sheriff would tax them so heavily, wanting the money for himself. When the coins rained down into their humble homes, they cried tears of joy. They would be able to eat again, all thanks to the bravery and good hearts of Robin and his merry men. One day a messenger came to Robin's forest den with news of an archery competition. The prize would be a golden arrow. Robin was famous for being the best archer in all the land, able to hit a target from miles away. "It's a trap," said one of the merry men. "The sheriff knows you are a fantastic archer. He's using this competition to draw you into the castle so he can capture you." Robin was too brave to ever back down from a challenge. He decided to hatch a plan. The day of the competition came. The crowds were huge, and 10 brave contestants lined up to take their shots. The sheriff asked in a whisper, "Has Robin come?" But his servants shook their heads. "We will spread the word about what a coward he is," said the sheriff. "He is too afraid to test his skills or to face me. He knows I'm braver and smarter than him." The competition began. 2 archers stood out above the rest: William, the sheriff's best knight, and the strange man in a big black cloak and a wide-brimmed hat. After many rounds, only these 2 contestants remained. It was time for the last arrow to be shot. The champion of this round would be declared the best shooter in the entire kingdom, winning the golden prize. William went first, shooting his arrow dead into the center of the target. The crowd went wild. There was no way the mysterious second shooter could beat that. The sheriff clapped. "Perfect, my boy," he said. Finally, it was the turn of the cloaked man. His arrow whistled smoothly through the air. Bang! It hit the target, slicing William's arrow right down the middle. The crowd cheered louder than they had all day. The man in black jumped onto the sheriff's platform and swiped the gleaming golden arrow from his hands. Pulling off the cloak and hat, he revealed a familiar green outfit underneath. It was Robin all along. "This belongs to me, sir," he chortled, throwing his cloak over the sheriff's head. With a quick move, Robin jumped over the nearby wall and on to a horse that was waiting on the other side. "Robin Hood!" screamed the sheriff. But it was too late. Robin and his men were already riding away into the forest, escaping the sheriff and his soldiers. Once again, Robin was so pleased he had grabbed the golden arrow. He knew he could sell it and give the money to the poor people who needed it. In the forest, the outlaws lived happily, knowing this wasn't the last they would see of the sheriff. There were plenty more pranks to come. Once upon a time, there lived a wealthy merchant and his daughter. He called her Beauty because she had wonderful thick dark hair and deep brown eyes. Everyone that saw her thought she was very pretty. The merchant had to travel a lot and would bring Beauty back presents from his trips. One day, Beauty asked for a single red rose as her gift. The merchant promised to find one. He crossed through deep ravines and dark forests on his way to trade fine cloth. On his way home, he finally came across high green hedges spotted with silky crimson roses. They surrounded a dark castle with pointed spires and stone gargoyles. "I'm sure they won't miss just one," he thought to himself as he gently plucked one rose from the hedge. As the stem broke off, a ferocious-looking creature sprung from the hedge. He had a brown, hairy body and huge fangs, but was wearing a button jacket and pantaloons of fine purple silk. He snarled and bellowed right into the merchant's face. "You are stealing my roses. I will throw you into the dungeons." The merchant was frightened and quickly stuttered that it was a gift for Beauty. After hearing of the marvelous girl, the beast agreed to let the merchant go, but only if he could keep Beauty in his castle for a while. The merchant did not want to languish in the dungeons, so he sent for Beauty. When she arrived, the beast freed the merchant and locked Beauty inside the castle instead. Beauty was very afraid and angry at first. She refused to leave the room the beast gave her and wouldn't eat any of the food he made for her. Many days passed until Beauty, hungry and weak, decided to leave her bedroom and come downstairs to eat. She was amazed by the fantastic spread the beast had laid out. He was not very talkative, but smiled shyly when she sat down. Beauty could tell he was pleased to see her, and she was very surprised by his gentle manners. After a delicious meal, the pair chatted for a short while, and Beauty was impressed by his charming conversation. She decided to come down every night for dinner, and as the weeks passed, found more and more things she liked about the Beast. He treated Beauty with kindness and was never rude to her. He wanted her to have the finest bedroom, the prettiest clothes, and as much time as she liked to wander amongst his magnificent grounds. She took care of the roses and spent lots of time reading and sewing. As time went on, the Beast fell deeply in love with Beauty. One day he asked her to marry him, but Beauty refused. She missed her father and was still a little afraid of the Beast's monstrous body. Beauty became very lonely with only the Beast for company. He felt sorry for her, so he gave her a magic mirror through which she could see her father and her home. "Now you won't be lonely any more," he said. The mirror made things worse than ever, as Beauty could see her father's pale, unwell face. She begged the Beast, "Please let me go home. My father looks sick, and I must get back to him." "You may go to stay with your father for 7 days, but you must promise to return," the Beast growled. He didn't want her to leave, but didn't want her to be unhappy either, or he knew she would never love him back. Beauty finally journeyed back home, and on seeing her pretty face, her father began to recover. Beauty stayed with him all week. She was so happy being with her father that after 7 days she had forgotten all about the Beast. It wasn't until many days later, when she had a terrible nightmare, that she saw the Beast's face again. In her dream, he was very weak, howling in anguish and pain. Beauty woke up, feeling terrible that she had broken her promise. She hurried back through the woods to the castle. She found the Beast in the same state he had been in her dream, lying on the cold stone floor, almost wasted away. Beauty held his great head in her hands and wept. "Please don't die, Beast. You are kind and charming and really wonderful. I don't care about your fur or your fangs. I will marry you." As soon as Beauty said these words, the Beast's fur started to thin and disappear, and his fangs to shrink. Right in front of her eyes, he turned into a handsome prince. He opened his eyes and said, "Beauty, you have saved me. I was under a curse all these years, only to be cured when someone truly fell in love with me." Beauty was so happy that she had looked beyond the Beast's bristly exterior and seen the kindness inside him. Now the Beast could live his life as a prince again and marry the girl who saw the real charm in him. Once upon a time, there was a prince who was searching for a wife. He traveled all over the world looking for a suitable princess, meeting many beautiful women along the way. Something was missing. Although these women were beautiful, he was never able to have a great conversation with them. He was almost at the point of giving up, so he went home to his palace to think things over. The night that he got back home to his parents, a terrible storm was raging. Thunder boomed, lightning cracked through the sky, and the rain hammered on the roof. In all of this noise, the prince heard a soft rapping on the palace door. "It's just the rain," his father, the king, said. The prince was sure there was someone out there, so he went and unlocked the heavy iron door. On the doorstep stood a plain-looking girl with soaking wet hair, dark clothes, and a miserable face. Her horse stood next to her, tossing its head against the pouring rain. The prince thought she looked quite rough. He knew he couldn't leave her outside, so he ushered her through the door and had his footman take her horse to his stable. "Thank you, kind prince," said the girl. "I am so grateful. I was riding back to my father's kingdom and got so terribly lost in the storm." "Kingdom?" said the prince. "You mean—" "Yes, sir, I am a princess," said the girl. "I suppose I don't look my best tonight." The prince didn't believe her for a moment. All of the princesses he had met had been much more beautiful than this peasant girl. The king and queen invited the girl to join them for dinner. They didn't believe she was a princess either, as no princess would be wearing such drab, wet clothes or have such a plain face. As they ate their dinner and talked, they were quite amazed by the plain girl's wit and charm. She spoke all night with such eloquence and good humor that the prince could feel himself falling in love with her. After dinner, the girl went to use the washroom, and the prince turned to his mother. "Mother, this girl is far too plain to be a princess, and I believe she has lied," said the prince. "I cannot marry someone who has lied, but I like her very much." "Well," said the queen, "there is one sure way to find out whether or not she is lying." She gathered all of her chambermaids and instructed them to creep upstairs and prepare a guest room for the night. "Go to the kitchen and take a single pea from the cook," she told them. "Then place the pea under the mattress of the guest bed. Then take 20 more mattresses from all the other guest rooms and place them on top of the bed. Put a ladder beside it so the girl can reach the top." The chambermaids thought this was to be a very odd request, but they did as they were told. The girl went happily to the room, polite enough not to mention the huge pile of mattresses, and the other inhabitants of the castle didn't hear a peep from her until the morning, when she came down for breakfast. She had huge circles under her eyes and was yawning. "My dear," said the queen, "did you not sleep well?" "I don't mean to be rude," said the girl, "but the mattresses were, well, rather lumpy, I'm afraid. I didn't get a wink of sleep all night, as there was an especially hard lump digging right into my back." The queen gasped. Now she was sure that the girl was really a princess. Nobody but a real princess could be as sensitive as to feel the pea through all those layers. Now he knew that she wasn't a liar but a good honest girl. The prince asked for her hand in marriage. He felt very silly for trying to pick a wife by her beauty alone, and he had been wrong to judge the sweet girl by her face and clothes. Now he could see that real sensitivity, wit, charm, and great conversation is something that lies within. He vowed never to be judgmental again. Once upon a time there was a poor shoemaker who lived with his wife. He worked very hard, cutting leather and stitching shoes every day to sell to his customers. He was a good, honest man, but often did not get many people passing through his shop. His savings dwindled until one day he had only enough leather left to make one more pair of shoes. "After this, I will have to shut my shop," he sighed sadly. That evening he set his leather and all his tools out on his workbench, planning to start his final pair of shoes in the morning. Another day had passed with no customers at the shop. Although he had such great troubles, the shoemaker had a clear, honest conscience and a heart full of trust in fate, so he did not worry himself. He went to bed and slept soundly, knowing that there would be an answer if he had faith. He woke in the morning and hurried down to his workshop to get started on his final pair of shoes. To his amazement, a pair of shoes already sat on his bench. They were a beautiful blue pair of loafers, just as he had imagined he would make in his head. They were perfectly crafted, with stitches so small he could hardly see them. The shoemaker bowed his head and said, "Thank you," out loud, hoping whoever helped could hear him. Later that day, a customer came in. The lady was the first customer he'd had in many days, and she liked the beautiful blue shoes very much. She tried them on, and they fit her perfectly. She gave the shoemaker several coins, much more than he had asked for, as the shoes were so perfectly crafted. Her payment was enough to buy the leather for 2 more pairs of shoes. The shoemaker went to bed early, hoping to get a good start on work the next day. When he rose the next morning, the same thing had happened again. The leather he had left out on his workbench had been crafted into 2 beautiful pairs of shoes, one green and one red. "Thank you," the shoemaker said out loud to the workshop again, never forgetting his manners. More customers came in that day and fell in love with the 2 wonderful pairs of shoes. They also overpaid, so the shoemaker could afford leather for 4 more pairs of shoes. Every day for many weeks, the same pattern went on. Shoes would arrive beautifully stitched and finished on the shoemaker's workbench. He would thank the empty workshop, and customers would pay high prices. Soon the shoemaker's business was thriving once again, all thanks to the nightly visitor. Who could it be? He didn't know anyone in town that could stitch shoes so perfectly. Christmas time came, and the shoemaker was feeling in the holiday spirit. "I wish we could find out who works in our workshop late at night," he said to his wife, "as I'd love to give them a Christmas gift. I am so grateful for all their help." The shoemaker and his wife hatched a plan to hide under a blanket in the workshop, leaving a single light burning by the workbench so they could spy on the helper. They waited there until past midnight. They were amazed to see 2 little elves creep into the room through a hole in the skirting board. They were just like ordinary people, only barely 12 inches high. They wore ragged shirts and trousers and no socks at all. Carefully, they sat down at the workbench and began to make shoes. So fast their little fingers shaped and stitched the leather that 20 pairs of perfect shoes were made in no time at all. The shoemaker marveled. When morning broke, the little elves ran back into their hole. The shoemaker turned to his wife and exclaimed, "These wonderful little creatures have made us rich and comfortable again. We must repay them for their kindness." His wife understood immediately and nodded. "I'll get to work right away," she said, sitting down at her sewing machine. When she was finished, 2 bright, silky shirts, 2 pairs of trousers, and 2 pairs of woolly socks lay in her lap. They laid them on the bench, where they usually left the leather, and waited again in their hiding spot. Midnight came again, and soon the little elves crept back into the workroom. They saw the clothes lying on the bench, just their size. They whooped with joy and took off their old rags for the new fancy outfits. They danced and skipped around all night before taking off out of the front door this time. The shoemaker and his lovely wife never saw them again, but their good deed was returned by fate for many years. They never lacked customers and lived truly happy lives.